Okay, if you've clicked on this video, thank you, because it's a long video. And second, if you remember from my Cahokia hometown video, I talked about how I lived there for 25 years and then lived in another city for about the last 25. And you can probably tell from my videos that other city is Belleville. This is the street that I moved to when I moved here, actually now 25 years ago. I lived in one of these apartments. I'm not going to say which one, but as you see, this has actually got a lot of apartments here. And believe it or not, this is actually not within the city limits of Belleville. It uses a Belleville post office, has a Belleville mailing address, and is in a Belleville public school system. But is not technically in Belleville. It is actually one street over from Belleville. And I will show you that street coming up here. And the reason I moved here originally was because there was a property manager known as Dandel Properties. They're still around. And they had just a plethora of apartments. They had them all over the place in Belleville, Fairview Heights, Swansea, and I saw dozens and dozens of them. Found one in Brookshire that I absolutely loved. Lived there for just over 3 years, and then the property manager changed when the building was sold. So then I moved to the downtown area and spent over 20 years there. And I will get into more of that as I do this. You'll know that the video is titled The Longest Non-Highway Main Street in Belleville. And this is obviously not Main Street. It is West Boulevard, and I will show you here where Belleville begins. It is actually up at this intersection right here we are about to cross. So right now we are on the outskirts of Belleville, technically not within Belleville, but as soon as we cross 161, which is Carlisle Avenue right here, we will be in Belleville. You can see for all intents and purposes that area is Belleville. I mean, it's got a Belleville school system, it's got a Belleville mailing address, uses a Belleville post office. It's, for all intents and purposes, Belleville. To the left is Belleville East. Straight ahead is a subdivision, and it curves a little bit, so you'll see that as soon as I get a chance to go. And West Boulevard is actually the dividing line for Belleville. So over on the left is the city limits of Belleville. Over on the right is actually unincorporated St. Clair County, and that's where I was living when I was living on Brookshire. And this is also where Main Street starts. And since I moved to the east side of Belleville, I will start it over on the east side like this. And we will come up here. You'll see the entrance, one of the entrances to Belleville East on the left. Coming up down there. And gotta go a little bit of a ways until we reach Main Street. And so I figured I'd give a little bit of the history of moving to Belleville. I chose it because it had just a huge amount of apartments. I wanted to get out of Cahokia for obvious reasons, and this part of Belleville was pretty nice, and you can see here it's still pretty nice. And when I saw it with Dandel, I pretty much fell in love with it, and I love this area. It's a nice half of Belleville, because Belleville is split up into 3 areas, the east side, the west side, and the downtown. And before I go into that, I want to say Belleville is not a small town in southern Illinois. We are a St. Louis suburb, and that's because we have very close proximity to downtown St. Louis, as well as 3 Metrolink stops with Memorial, Belleville, which is downtown, and College, which is on the east side. Okay, coming up here, we've got the actual beginnings of Main Street. So I don't know if you can see it on the sign or not, but I'll make a right turn. And it actually, from my perspective, begins in a cul-de-sac. So let's go down here to this cul-de-sac. And we will be beginning the long 9.5 mile drive down the longest non-highway main street in the United States. It is confirmed that this is the longest main street that is not a highway. There is another main street that's longer, but it's a highway. So we come down here to the cul-de-sac, and this will be the official beginnings of Main Street. You'll see nice houses right here. We turn around. And now we are officially going down the longest non-highway main street in the United States. It's located in Belleville. Like I said, there are 2 halves of it in the downtown. This is the east side. It's pretty well residential. It's very little commercial over here. It's one of the reasons why there were so many apartment choices over here. We come up to the sign is West Boulevard. Technically this area right here is not within the city limits of Belleville. Once we cross West Boulevard again, we will be back in the city limits. If you were to Google map the city of Belleville and search, you will notice that West Boulevard is the dividing line. So we are officially now entering the city limits of Belleville, still continuing on East Main. The east side of the fountain is East Main, the west side is West Main. The west side is longer than the east side, but for all practical purposes, it's about 50-50. So over here, as you see, is more residential. There are different spots in it, so I will timestamp different things in this video to note which things are coming up, and I'll put that down in the description. So first things first, coming up here at this stoplight is the former Hardee's that I filmed. It's now been torn down, so it's a big empty lot. There's not much really to show here, as this is a more residential area. We got one of the many fire stations right there, but on the left is a big empty lot where the Hardee's was. Next, this is 161. This is one of the 5 highways, I believe, or 6 maybe, highways that run through Belleville. So we've got 13, 15, 158, 159, 161, 177, so it's going to be 6 highways that run through Belleville. It's got also 5 different zip codes, and a population just within the city limits, according to the population sign, of 45,500, which, from doing some research, found out actually goes back to the 2000 census. However, if you add in people that live on the fringes of it that are just outside the city, like I was, it's going to be well over 50,000. And the US Census defines a big city as a minimum of 50,000 population. However, we would still not be a big city even if we incorporated all that and did surpass 50,000 because we are in the greater St. Louis metropolitan area. So even if this city got 1 million people, at best it would be the Belleville St. Louis metropolitan area, similar to Minneapolis St. Paul. And that's because we are a suburb of greater St. Louis. That is one major reason why we're able to have these many people. Because it's a nice bedroom community for those living here and then working in St. Louis, especially with 3 Metrolink stops. They can then take that right over into St. Louis. So coming up now on the east side of the downtown area, you'll start to begin to see some older buildings here. Belleville is a very old town. It was established in 1814 by George Blair. He gave the land to move the county seat from Cahokia, of all places, to Belleville. So about 150 years after that, I did the same and moved from Cahokia to Belleville. But you'll see some of these older houses and older buildings here as we enter more of the downtown area. This is still East Main, but it's the downtown region. And this is where I moved to, so definitely city limits, definitely city services. You get a library card. So really, you'll start to see this historic area, and the roads aren't the best, and I've got a Cavalier, so you might notice that on some of these. But you'll start to realize this is more of a downtown area than a residential area. And the new mayor has come up with a slogan that says, "Great Big Small Town," because she's wanting to note the fact that since we are the largest city in southern Illinois, we've got more things and more people than any other city south of Springfield. But we also still have a small town Main Street feel like this. And you'll really begin to see how this looks like a small town America, especially down Main Street. It's got a whole bunch of stoplights. This is still East Main. And you'll notice some really nice older architecture. Unfortunately, Belleville's population is shrinking. Its peak was over 45,000. It has shrunk to over 40,000, I believe 41 or 42 from the last estimates, as much as you can believe estimates. The Ritz Theater on the right became a church. And since I've lived here for 25 years, I can kind of give a little bit of a tour here of what's going on. This Tavern on Main on the right is a really nice area. It's a restaurant as well as a tavern. They redid another old building and made it that. And you'll see the Labor History Museum public parking sign. This is a nice downtown area. I've really liked living downtown. I would have stayed downtown if the property manager hadn't been a tool and kept raising my rent drastically and not giving me anything for it. They repeatedly raised my rent and I never got any upgrades or nothing. They also gave discounts to military and new people, and I was paying more than new people. So we see here the Lincoln Theater coming up on the right. This is an old Belleville theater from 1922, and it just celebrated its 100th anniversary last year. This over here, across the street from it on the right, is where an SS Kresge once operated. So we had an SS Kresge downtown. Keep on going here. This is the last of East Main. Once we reach the fountain straight ahead, which is off right now, it becomes West Main, and it's intersecting 159, which is North Illinois on one side, South Illinois on the other. Here's the north part right here that you're saying. And at this point, we have just begun West Main Street, and now the real drive begins. It's really about 6 miles over here and about 3 miles over on the east side. So I say about 50-50, but really, in all practicality, it is not 50-50. You'll see this is more of downtown still. Nice historic looking buildings, nice older buildings. With each one still occupied, there's a lot of traffic that comes through. This is a Sunday morning, so it's pretty light on traffic. You'll see all these stop signs. Eckert floors to the right, that actually was run by the family of the former mayor who recently passed away. I believe he did last year. It's now got a new mayor, Patty Gregory, after she replaced longtime incumbent Mark Eckert, who actually lost re-election. This is where the Oliver C. Joseph used to operate, over on the right. And now we've got a nice DMV here, which moved in after I moved to downtown Belleville. And downtown Belleville is great for walking. I believe its walking score was rated 88, but I'd rate it higher. I'd say a good 95 out of 100, because I rarely drove to places when I was in downtown Belleville, because it's just so easy to walk everywhere. Then you had Metrolink and the Belleville station, which is only about a half to a mile, somewhere in that range, from where my apartment was in downtown Belleville, and it was great. So here's where West Main intersects West A Street. And this is the end of West A, and it continues on as West Main. We're still in the outer edge of the downtown region. This is the western half of it, so you'll see more of a downtown looking area, but it'll start looking more and more residential. It gets less and less from the commercial. Belleville Police Station over on the left. They recently built that, moving out of City Hall. Or I believe next to City Hall, maybe. Then keep on going, you'll still see more of a downtown area, as it's going to start spreading out more. But it still has a nice look to it, and some of these buildings have been removed, but you still see a nice good chunk of buildings on the right that are nice older buildings and nice historic ones. A lot of these dating back over 100 years, as well as older homes. The demographics of Belleville also shifted drastically while I was here. When I was here, it was probably 80% white, maybe 20, not even that high, maybe 15% black. As of the current census, it's about 55% white, 35% black, and 10% other. So it has gone up. And I will end this video by showing where the Signal Hill fence is, and before I go into that, Signal Hill, I will note, is actually not in part of Belleville. It is in unincorporated Stickey Township, which is next to Belleville, similar to the part that I started with, where they are next to Belleville, but using a Belleville address. So for all intents and purposes, Belleville, but not really in Belleville. Belleville will not service them unless there's some kind of a contract or agreement with them. 17th Street is one of the main thoroughfares in Belleville. That's also where the family video was that I filmed over here on the right. Got a nice older church there on the left. And I will keep on with this nice little guided tour to actually explain some of these different areas of Belleville, as this is the west side. When I moved out of downtown, I moved over to the western side. The western side still has a lot of areas to move to. There are still good areas of Belleville, but unfortunately there are some not so good areas of Belleville. It's kind of a mix. Its demographics are similar to Florissant, Missouri, with about 10,000 less, but if you added in all that area next to Belleville, that would certainly be well over 50,000 as well. But it's got a similar split of white to black ratio as Florissant, but a much, much higher crime rate than Florissant. And unfortunately, that is one of the reasons why Belleville is shrinking. It doesn't have to do with the demographics, it has a lot to do with the crime. Because I've known many people who lived in Belleville that moved out of Belleville because of the crime. And I have been a victim of crime myself. My apartment storage unit was burglarized. And unfortunately, I did lose a few things out of it. But I was able to at least replace them. And it's still Belleville. There's not much I can say about that other than it's going to have crime. I mean, St. Clair County is one of the highest for crime. And some people will point to East St. Louis, which has the highest murder capita rate in the country. Could be. But the nice thing about Belleville is you see it's really spread out. So there are multiple neighborhoods in Belleville. So we cross over the railroad tracks here. You'll see the urgent care that went up on the right. This opened after I had moved to Belleville. And it's nice having that, given the fact that St. Elizabeth's left us. Because we used to have two hospitals. One was Memorial, the other was St. Elizabeth's. St. Elizabeth's moved to O'Fallon. And O'Fallon has been one of the few cities actually growing. It has grown so much, it's projected that in the next 20 years, if its population trend continues and Belleville's population continues, that it will surpass Belleville to be the largest city in southern Illinois. That's more of a wait and see. The new mayor of Belleville is doing all she can to try to stem that. But over here on the west side, you'll see this is way more residential. There are different areas of this that I want to point out. You'll see the library there on the left. And here is more homes and stuff on the right. And notice that Main Street is also expanded into 5 lanes here. And that's because this is more of a business district coming up. There is a famous area that is known as Restaurant Row. It's pretty much dissipated now. There's very few things left from it. But when we get over here to Spike's, this is the beginning of Restaurant Row, where a whole bunch of restaurants once existed. You'll see down there in the far distance is the former Taco Bell on the left, next to the Domino's. I filmed that. That was where Taco Bell originally was. They've actually moved up one out to where they are now. On the left, which is 4204, that's the former Dairy Queen. I believe I filmed that as well. Next to it used to be Shoney's, then they tore it down, made of barbed wires. Over on the left as well is the former Steak and Shake. On the right, coming up, you'll see where the Burger King used to be. Next to that's the former Wendy's. There should be the Steak and Shake now on the left. O'Reilly's used to be a Bonanza that turned into Ponderosa. Here's where the former Wendy's was on the right. You see a whole bunch of restaurants here. And then the Ponderosa and Bonanza operated at the same time. Here's where the former Baskin-Robbins was on the right, former Arby's on the right, former McDonald's on the left. Right next to it used to be the Ponderosa that burnt down and was torn down. So you can see all these former restaurants. That's why it was known as Restaurant Row. And Riley's is about the only thing left of Restaurant Row here on the right. So that's it. Spike's and Riley's about the only thing left of Restaurant Row. Then here's the CVS to the right. This is the location that the one in Swansea said to visit, and that's because this road here, North Belt West, goes right on into Swansea. This Belleville and Swansea borders are a lot. Belleville makes a nice kind of U shape all around Swansea. And that means West Belleville borders Swansea, the downtown area, northern part of this borders Swansea, and the east side borders Swansea. And 161 is a major highway that intersects Belleville, Swansea, back to Belleville. So coming up here, you'll see Emo's, so a little bit of Restaurant Row still remaining. And here's the former Pizza Hut on the right. I don't know if I had filmed that or not. KFC there on the left. It's at Margarita's now, is the Pizza Hut. The KFC is one of two. There's a second one over on the east side. Or I believe it might be over more still on the western edge. But Belleville's got two, even three of a lot of things. It's got 3 McDonald's, 3 Taco Bells, and 3 Hardee's. Okay, when you see this Choose Life here, this is the 3rd high school. This is Althoff. It is a Catholic high school that is co-ed. It's got both boys and girls, but it is a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade high school. That's because Belleville has a major Catholic population, which of course you would figure over 50,000 people with its fringes, it's going to be a lot. Got Commerce Bank here on the right. Bit more of a business district area here. Here's a Taco Bell on the left, if you can see it there in the video. That's where the Taco Bell moved to. The other two Taco Bells over on the east side, and then one by the fairgrounds. We get more commercial coming up here. See more businesses there. The Sonic over on the left. With a laundromat here, used to be a bank. This Best Wash Laundry. That used to be a bank at one point. Over on the left there, you'll see it's known as the Arcades. That actually lost part of its building. And this is where they filmed the thing for 60 Minutes. Unfortunately, one of those buildings, over on the right is the Home and Kroger, was succumbed to fire. And that's one sad thing about Belleville, is it has a pretty good amount of crime, so unfortunately things like that with an abandoned business will get torched, just like the Ponderosa. Got the Associated Bank on the left. We're still on Main Street. As you can see, this is quite a bit of Main Street here. This is turning more and more into residential as we get out of the commercial area of it. And we are actually getting closer and closer to East St. Louis. And I will show the border of East St. Louis when we get at it, because I will make a turn when I show you where the Signal Hill fence is. Well, you can see this is still a nice looking area of Belleville, not too bad. Crime rate is actually a little higher, especially as we get closer and closer to East St. Louis, unfortunately. But I mean, it is what it is. I've spent 25 years living in Belleville. I would hope to move one day, but who knows if that actually happened or not. I've moved 3 times in Belleville. Technically, the first one was just outside Belleville, but again, all intents and purposes Belleville. Moving from Belleville to Belleville to Belleville. I don't know where I would move to. I tried O'Fallon, but boy, were they expensive. And that explains one of the reasons why it's growing so much, because it's got some high property value. Over here is getting on the probably far western edge of Belleville. You see it's turning very residential over here. As we're getting closer and closer to East St. Louis, we're kind of inching closer to it. As I'm doing the speed limit down Main Street, giving a nice tour here, showing Belleville. The nice roads of Belleville. They don't seem to spend a lot of money on the roads, so you can hear a lot of these bumps, especially in a Cavalier like this. Well, you see, these houses don't look too bad. I mean, the crime rate is obviously higher than average, but it's not really that bad. East St. Louis, it's got a really high crime rate. And again, East St. Louis has the highest murder count. But Belleville, at least, doesn't have a lot of murders. There are some, obviously, but they are usually pretty rare. Most of the crime in Belleville is going to be property crime, harassment, stuff like that, things that I experienced. And so we keep on, still see some nice areas of Belleville. We have another Belleville police substation. So we've got a nice, semi-good area here. Here's the Mount Hope Cemetery, over on the right. Believe it or not, I've got a family plot there, and I've got a plot there myself, so when I think I'm going to be out of Belleville, it looks like I'm going to be in Belleville for pretty much ever. It ends, I believe, at this road up here at the light, because it goes back to the back. And we keep on going. And getting to more of the edge of Belleville, the western edge. This is getting very close now to ending. We're probably within another mile or so of ending West Main Street. And you'll see just how long this video is, how long this Main Street is, because this is still West Main Street. We got a second cemetery here, that's a Catholic cemetery. This is where they buried that veteran who was killed recently from a mission. She was from Belleville. She had her funeral at a Catholic church and was buried in a Catholic cemetery here in Mount Carmel. Then the stoplight coming up down here at the end of this road will actually be the end of Belleville. So I'm going to change lanes here. And I'm going to end it as this is the far western edge of Belleville, and this is where 60 Minutes came and did that nice piece on Belleville versus East St. Louis. So coming up here, this stoplight straight ahead, this is the dividing line for East St. Louis. So you'll see on the other side of the street, that's East St. Louis. This side of the street, this is Belleville. This is where Belleville and East St. Louis meet, right here at 157. This highway here is 157. And when we get here after the turn, you'll see a nice East St. Louis sign that they put up. Unfortunately, East St. Louis is a shrinking town, so it means that it is going to continue dropping if they don't curb their crime rate, and unfortunately, their crime rate is going to keep going up, because it is based on overall population, and the overall population continues to drop, thus increasing the crime rate drastically. So let me turn to the right lane so I can show here the St. Louis sign, right there. And now I will get to this left lane here. Let's first go around. And I will show where Signal Hill is. Remember, Signal Hill is an unincorporated Stuckey Township. Comes up here at this left turn where it says no left turn. So let me make a left turn here and use this to turn around. They do this because they obviously don't want people going down this road, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to show, here's that fence that 60 Minutes reported. So let me come down to this nice little driveway here and back up and show this sign and end the video that the 60 Minutes piece uses, which they wrongly said the affluent area of Belleville, because Signal Hill is not within the city limits of Belleville. Yes, it is affluent, but no, it is not within the city limits. Let this person go. Get back over, and I will show then the sign here, which shows Belleville one side, East St. Louis on the other. Here's a sign coming up on the right. There it is. You can clearly see it. East St. Louis one side, Belleville the other. We're going to pass it. You get a very good shot of it right there. That's what 60 Minutes uses. And they neglect to say that Belleville now has a black population that's over 30%. It has drastically changed from when they did the report in the early 90s, and that's because they have an agenda. So now as we enter back into Belleville, I will end this video now, and I will thank you guys for watching. And if you enjoyed it, leave a like on it, especially given how long it is. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.